Hello, this is Tyson, the host of the TVEnthusiast podcast, The Weekly Set. The podcast you are listening to now is a Better Call Saul Impressions podcast and not part of The Weekly Set. This podcast will contain spoilers from the first two episodes of Better Call Saul, as well as any corresponding events from Breaking Bad. Okay, so I read through your impressions and added my own, and sounds like we're both pretty positive about it. I think I got myself a little too hyped up, though.
I think you might have. I don't know. I mean, I'm in like this weird position where I actually haven't finished Breaking Bad.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, I think I'm on episode 9 of season 3 now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna spoil yourself. You need to watch.
Yeah, I that's what I'm afraid of. So far, the first 2 episodes, there aren't any spoilers for anything that has happened in Breaking Bad up to this point that I'm aware of. I mean, if there's any spoilers, it's invisible to me. Maybe I'll be watching Breaking Bad now and go, oh, geez.
There's some light stuff, you know, I mean, you kind of know where Saul ends up at the end of the series.
Yeah.
So there's that, you know, but that's about it that you've had so far.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to become lesser as it goes on.
That might have potentially been a big spoiler for me, but I already knew offhand that Saul survived the series Breaking Bad, so it wasn't like a huge spoiler for me to see that. Other than that, it was cool. I thought seeing Tuco at the end of the first episode was really fun. Like, I got a big kick out of that when I saw that.
It's a weird thing because in one sense that could have been like a really just like a too far out there kind of like, yeah, right, you know, like something like that's gonna happen kind of moment. But because like the tone of the show is primarily like a comedy, but still like a drama at the same time, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, like the fact that he shows up is funny, that's intentional. It's not like it's stupid that he shows up.
It could have been stupid. Also, I thought of something when I was reflecting back on the second episode earlier today after I'd written up my impressions and sent them off. I was still thinking about that episode, and I thought, the question, did they have to make such an obvious nod to Breaking Bad? They could have done that whole sequence with some other guy, with some other gangster. And then I thought, but if they had a new character in Tuco's place, it wouldn't have had as much emotional resonance with like the audience that had seen Breaking Bad. Like, the scene probably wouldn't have been as tense, because if it was a different character, you wouldn't know who he was or what he was capable of. Whereas Tuco, he's crazy. You know from Breaking Bad that he's just insane, so you know exactly how much trouble Saul is in at that moment.
Yeah. And
I think that gets you more invested in that scene than otherwise.
I completely agree with you. You said that in the impressions, and that's definitely the case. I think that's true with a lot of the kind of little Breaking Bad nods they're making, you know?
Right.
Another one that I noticed was he's like working out of the back of this nail salon, and that's the one that he tried to push off on Walter as an opportunity for money laundering.
Yeah. And I guess that gives you backdrop of, how Saul knew about that place, where he found that place. It's because he worked out
exactly.
of it. Yeah.
So there's these little kind of connections like that. It's like, oh, well, Saul knows these guys, so he's in a way, he's kind of looking out for him. He's like, here, I'll, if I have to help somebody set up a laundry business, I'll set it up with somebody else I know,
Right, yeah, exactly. And what I like about these nods is that they're not gratuitous. They're not just to say, hey, remember Breaking Bad? You love that. It's really not, they do it in like a really clever way to where it's not only just like a wink, but it also serves the story that they're telling.
Well, Breaking Bad does that in general. It did it even with itself. I mean, without spoiling something, I won't go into detail on it, but they actually show in the final season, like Walter's pants that flew off in the pilot episode. You see him in the desert.
Oh,
they're just there.
That's cool.
So there's little things like that, and it's awesome that they do that, and it makes it feel so interconnected in such a cool way. And yeah, they, I love, there is another part that comes up, should be coming up soon for you that, that goes back to something that happened earlier on that you kind of forget about. You're like, oh yeah, that happened or whatever. And then it just comes back to bite, later. And it's interesting. I'm kind of tiptoeing around so I don't say anything. But
Right. The last episode I watched of Breaking Bad was the episode right after where Hank gets attacked by those Tuco's cousins.
Yeah, that was tense.
That was tense. I was like, okay. I think up to the point where I'm at, that was probably like the most tense moment of the series.
Oh yeah, there's ones that are more tense than that, at least in my opinion. There's one coming up that, oh jeez, I was sitting at the edge of my seat and had my mouth hanging open when the episode ended just because it was so tense,
Right.
But oh yeah, there's a few. They're really good.
I have a sense
at tension.
that from where I'm at now, it's just gonna be a roller coaster. Until the
it gets better.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to more. The one nervous thing I was going into, I was actually planning on skipping Saul initially, because I didn't want to be spoiled for Breaking Bad, and I was thankful that at least the first 2 episodes so far didn't spoil me on anything that I didn't already know, or...
You just get kind of like a little thing right at the beginning of the first one. And it looks like that's, I imagine based on, stuff that they've done with Breaking Bad before, that they'll probably do something like that again, but it's probably a ways off.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably a ways off.
I know they said that, people were saying when the show was going into production, is it going to be a prequel, a sequel, or is it going to take place at the same time? And they basically said, yeah, all of this.
Yeah, all of this. One of the things Vince Gilligan has said in interviews is that he is going to take advantage of the fact that he could jump around to any point in Saul's life and just do that if he feels it's appropriate. So he's not going to be like, he's not saying himself that it's strictly going to be set before Breaking Bad or anyway. Any point in Saul's life he wants to go to, he's going to go to, regardless of where it takes place.
And that's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
That's something he did in Breaking Bad a lot, too. There'd be, like, these parts that, like, oh, this took place before, and then it gives you this greater insight into something that you never really questioned before.
Right.
Like, there's a scene where it cuts back to something that happened, I think, around the pilot. I'm not sure if it was in the pilot, maybe somewhere. Yeah, it was the pilot, I think. And it cuts back to it like way later. It shows basically the same footage again, but then shows other stuff that kind of happened between that from a different character's perspective that you didn't see. And it's like, wow, that just gave you this whole other insight into something that happened that you just kind of went like, nobody was asking, I wonder what happened after this moment. But like, now that you have that insight, it gives you like a whole different dynamic on the relationship between the characters.
Oh yeah, I love that in Breaking Bad when they would just go over events from different points of view. That's definitely awesome when they do that.
So yeah, it's I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I think I overhyped myself for it. It's still really good, but I started hearing so much positive stuff that like my hype train started rolling and I just couldn't stop it.
I was sold. I don't think there was anything in the entire first season of Breaking Bad that was as tense and nail-biting as the Tuco scene in episode 2 of this series. It's like, Tuco didn't even like show up in Breaking Bad until the second season anyway.
No, he was in the first season, but right at the very end.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was like right at the very end of the first season.
So yeah, the first season had some intense parts, but not really tense parts. Like, they had the part where, he blew up the building.
That's right, that was Tuco, that was in season 1. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the part where he blew up the building. Most of it was he had that guy in his basement, and he was, like, wondering what to do with him. And I think...
That was a really good scene,
That was a really good scene, too. That went on for, like, several episodes.
I imagine we might see him again. We might see Crazy A.
Yeah, we might.
He was we know after he died, because like almost immediately after that, they cut to showing like the DEA and they were talking about how their informant had died or something, and that was Crazy A.
Yep.
was like an informant for the DEA that we had no idea about until after. And, that's something that Walter never learned, which is interesting. But we could totally see something kick in with that. That's going to be cool to see if they do anything with that. I don't want to be like looking at the show and going, what else can they tie into Breaking Bad? But I can't help it.
Yeah, right. Like now you're going to be looking at all the references and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I also like how like the whole ordeal with Tuco, that seems to be driving the narrative for the rest of the season now. Is where that it wasn't like, again, it wasn't just a cameo or a reference thrown in there to be cute. This is actually having consequences that are driving the narrative of the season, as we saw at the end when Tuco's associate visits Saul and talks to him about robbing this couple that Saul was trying to get the business of for like the entire first and second episode. And we know that Saul doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He doesn't want to have anything to do with these people. And, he kind of leaves, but he leaves, but he's not going to give Saul a choice in the matter. Saul is now in this, whether he wants to be or not.
And of course, and that ties into where he's at when Breaking Bad starts, is this like criminal lawyer.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting how all that plays together. Saying interesting again.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to how that all plays together. But yeah, it's exciting, watching all these things and seeing, things that you thought you had a good handle on and having that kind of upended on you. So, with Saul, it's really interesting seeing how he's saying interesting again. It's really cool seeing how he, is kind of struggling to be like a good lawyer, a good person,
Yeah.
And he has this history, his Slippy Jimmy or history and he had that moment with his brother where he's like, I promise I'm not backsliding, I'm not going back into that lifestyle or anything.
Saul is, he's different from Walter White in which he's not starting from a position of being like a good person and turning bad. He's kind of already a bad person.
He's like a bad person in recovery that's becoming bad again.
That's becoming bad again, yeah. Because he, at his heart, he is a con man.
Yeah.
And, and he's trying to do good. He's trying to stay on the right, but he's finding it increasingly difficult to do that.
Yeah, and like with Breaking Bad, everything he does has all these unforeseen consequences that start to pile up.
Yeah, like with Walt making the initial decision to start dealing meth. Saul's decision here is that he starts backsliding. He can't get this couple to hire him as their lawyer, and so he backslides into this con to get them to do it. And that has all these unforeseen consequences.
Yeah, it's man, I really liked that scene where they were basically, the wife of the guy was, for lack of a better word, it was like she was cock-blocking him.
Yeah.
He was like trying so hard to get that guy, to have him as his lawyer. And like right as he's about to like shake his hand or something, it's like you see, or sign something, you see his wife like reach out and stop his arm, and, and you can see that look on Saul's face where it's like, and it's making her more cautious of him because she can see it too.
Yeah, she can see it too. And
that like desperation.
And she wasn't sold on him to begin with because he didn't have an office. He just, it was clear that she was not totally okay with him. And so, and she has total control of her husband. That much was clear.
Yeah,
so Saul's chances of getting that were doomed from the start. Saul knew this too, intuitively, because early on in the first episode, when he calls them, he pretends to be his own secretary, and he gives excuses, for why they have to meet in a restaurant instead of in an office.
Yeah.
And Saul is very clearly, nervous and exasperated by the whole thing because this is something he wants so desperately.
And he also suffers from a similar hubris to what Walter White had. I mean, I was very strongly reminded of the scene in Breaking Bad where Walter turned down the offer for them to pay for his former partner's offer to pay for his cancer treatment, which would have made his whole meth business thing irrelevant. He wouldn't have had to have done it.
Right, he wouldn't have had to have done it, but he didn't want to accept charity because he felt he was above that.
And then we saw a very similar thing happen with Saul with getting the check and ripping it up.
With ripping it up.
He wants his brother to sell that stake and be done, and there's like a principle behind that. And but at the same time, it's what's dooming him. It's what's putting him in his rough situation.
Exactly. You could see how much Saul is struggling. Saul's chasing these people exactly because he's struggling, and he gets this check for $23,000 that would solve everything, and he just rips it up.
Yeah.
And he even goes there, and the guy tells him, there's more where that came from. We'll send you all the $23,000 checks you want. He basically says, and he turns it down. He says no, even though he is clearly struggling.
He dramatically screams lines from Network.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the Saul character too, a lot of his charm and comedic comes from the actor Bob Odenkirk.
Oh yeah.
Who is a very seasoned comedian. I loved Mr. Show. I don't know if you ever seen that.
I saw bits and pieces of Mr. Show. I never saw that was back in the days before DVR and stuff. So that was one of those catch it when it's on every so often kind of shows for me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I managed to catch it late nights on Comedy Central, back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And, it's hilarious. I mean, it's one of the funniest. I mean, so I became a big fan of it. I became a big fan of Bob Odenkirk as a comedian.
And then David Cross, of course, as well.
And David Cross, of course, as well. So when I saw Bob Odenkirk in Breaking Bad as this character, as a shady lawyer, I thought, oh my God, this character is gonna be hilarious. And to be fair, on Breaking Bad, he was mostly comedic relief on Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm. But he was interesting, beyond, it's saying interesting again, but he was interesting beyond just being a good comic relief character. There was more to him. I mean, he had this kind of weird code of honor to him too. I mean, he protected Jesse when it probably would have been more beneficial to him to sell him out. There were different kind of things. So it's
right. Yeah, he's interesting. He's layered, and it's interesting to see how well. I already know he's a good comedian, but it's interesting now to see how well he handles drama, the dramatic aspects, which he does a fantastic job with that too.
Oh yeah.
He just becomes Saul Goodman. I mean, there's no distinction in every aspect, and it's an amazing performance, I think.
The real moment he's had so far in this show, in my opinion, is in the second episode when he's on that date and everything's crunching. So it's like bread and it's crunching, and you can just kind of see on his face, you can see everything written there without a word being said.
Oh yeah, that was easily one of the best moments of the second episode. I mean, I cringed all the way through it because I could see how just the anguish on his face every time it happened because of what he witnessed in the desert. And that was just I mean, they're good at that. Breaking Bad was good with that kind of thing too, with the post-traumatic stress with Hank, there was the scene in Breaking Bad where Hank was in his garage making his beers, his microbrewery, and he was actually breaking the tops off of them.
Yeah.
Because he was so out of it because of the stress that he endured when he was out in the field. And that scene, that was like another hallmark of what what you would see in Breaking Bad.
In that sense, you could compare Saul Goodman to Hank in that both characters kind of started out as very like loud and obvious kind of cliche tropes.
Right.
You know, like Hank, when in Breaking Bad, when that show first started, he's just this like nothing but bravado, you know, I'll just, you know, make jokes and drink beer and, you know, like that kind of guy.
Yeah, this your typical macho guy, you know, yeah.
But there's a lot more to him, and there's a lot more to his struggles in throughout the series. And we're getting that kind of similar thing now with Saul, who, you know, of course he's not a macho bravado guy, but we're getting something similar in that, you know, we had this character that was like this comic relief character, and there were hints of depth in Breaking Bad, but we're starting to kind of see more. You know, we're starting to strip away the veneer, you know, and see kind of more of his core.
He started out as kind of a cliched sleazy lawyer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, lawyers be sleazy, you know, of course. But yeah, they're stripping away. They start at a place of, you know, like a cliched character trope, and then they peel back the layers, and you get more depth to that character than just like whatever the cliche is, and that's also really cool, I think.
I like when shows do that. I know Lost did the same thing as well. You know, Lost, they kind of had to do it because they had such a huge ensemble cast, but they introduced like, oh, this is the criminal, this is the terrorist, this is the, you know, like these very kind of broad strokes.
This is the doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
and then you get to kind of know them and see them as more than just that type.
That's what I love the most about Lost. That was really what kept me watching Lost more than anything else. Because, you know, I was so invested. They did such a good job of building up the characters, making you care about them, that you were willing to follow them into hell just to see what happened to them.
Yeah.
Because they got you that invested. That's actually really hard to do, surprisingly. I mean, I've watched a lot of shows where the characterization is just so bland and tepid, and you just don't care what happens to anybody, you know, and a lot of shows like that tend to rely too much on plot. Like all the crazy stuff happening. But if you can't get your characters right, all the crazy stuff in the world isn't going to make me care.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's why I say a lot, you know, but I'm surprised how often, you know, the characterization is done badly on TV. And it happens way too often in way too many shows, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's something you kind of see. There's this weird, like, feeling you can get from a show where it's like, you'll look and go like, you know, the production values are good. You know, they got good actors in the roles. They got, you know, everything seems to be right, but there's just this feeling that something's just not working, and it's because the characters are bland. And if the characters are bland, then what do you care about everything else that's happening?
Right. S.H.I.E.L.D. is like that.
See, I think S.H.I.E.L.D. was like that. It does get better. I mean, I think there's still a lot of work to be done there. But I really like Kyle MacLachlan's character on it when he comes in. He's really just, it's, you know, it's a kind of role that only somebody like him could play, and it works.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Kyle MacLachlan. Well, he's a fantastic actor, so.
Yeah.
I think. But I haven't gotten that far yet. I mean, I'm only halfway through the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's really a chore to watch it. I mean,
are you up to the point yet where where the Winter Soldier stuff happens?
I'm not.
What about Bill Paxton's character? Is he there yet?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, once he shows up, it gets a little bit better. That's even before the Winter Soldier stuff.
Oh, okay.
So, and, you know, he's just, Bill Paxton's great in those kind of roles. Those kind of like larger than life kind of, you know, and he comes in and he just nails it. And it's one of the few people on the show that does that, you know, and so you get that, and you really have this feeling like, oh, there's this cowboy S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, you know, and he just kind of saunters in and does his thing, and it's like, yeah, there you go, you got it, you know, and he does a really good job on that, and that's, I think, when it started getting better for me. And then, of course, you know, the events, the Captain America events start happening, and once that happens, you kind of get the impression that everything before was they were just treading water.
They were just, yeah, I mean, where I'm at, it's still early days, where, like, everybody is cardboard.
Yeah.
And it's just So, I mean,
they're so desperately trying to protect what they have coming that they're like not even letting the characters have proper interactions and, because they just want to so not tip their hand.
Right. And, I'll continue it. I mean, people say it gets better. People are now saying actually in season 2 that it's genuinely good now.
It is, yeah. And even Kat said that, and Kat was a huge, hugely dismissive of that show. So she didn't even like the second part of the first season, which a lot of people thought is where it kind of started turning around. But yeah, she started digging it in the second season. So it's good. I still think Agent Carter's more interesting.
Yeah, I agree there. Agent Carter so far is more interesting.
Did you see the most recent episode? Well, there's one tonight, but besides that.
Oh, there's one tonight. No, I haven't. I have to get on Hulu and watch that.
It's got the Howling Commandos.
Oh, cool. All right. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you got to see Dum Dum Dugan and all that.
It's too bad Fox owns the Fantastic Four rights, so we can't get, like, the 1940s superhero team, the Invaders.
Who knows, though, man? They might start easing some of that back in. Did you hear what just happened with Spider-Man?
I heard the Spider-Man's in the Marvel Universe now.
And that's crazy, Who would have thought that? So they worked out a compromise where Sony still owns the rights, but it's all kind of interconnected now, and there's negotiations on where the story goes so that it can stay interconnected, and that's cool. And who knows, maybe Fox will pick up on that and do something similar with their material. I can't imagine them doing it with the Fantastic Four, because that seems like a big departure from where Marvel would have taken it.
Yeah, Fox's Fantastic Four is a huge departure, I think. I'm kind of hoping that if the Fantastic Four does bomb for Fox, that they decide to just let it go, and that they don't keep pursuing it, because I think Fox has enough material with the X-Men to where they can just keep that and have that be their big superhero franchise. I don't see what benefit they get from keeping the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever going to be huge for them. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe it'll be a big box office hit, but I just don't see Fantastic Four taking off for Fox ever. X-Men is where their money is being made right now.
I think Marvel should just pay, they should just pay Fox the same amount of money that Fox paid for the X-Men license back in the day, which can't be that much. I think it was $7 million for Spider-Man, so it can't be that much for X-Men, which was even before that.
Yeah, it wasn't very much. The Marvel was in bankruptcy at the time, so they basically sold those rights away to get themselves out of bankruptcy. So it was actually at a point where Marvel was pretty desperate. So I'm pretty sure Fox, Sony, they got those rights for cheap at the time.
But they should offer to pay back just for the rights to use the word mutant.
Yeah,
just don't even
exactly.
It's like we were talking about this last week that it isn't necessarily a good thing to have the X-Men universe crossover. I don't know if I really want to see Wolverine in the Avengers, or something like that. But just being able to reference that mutants are a thing, and not having to kind of dance around it, even if it's just a few little sly references here and there, and that's it.
Just
somebody saying I heard some bald got a school and teaching some of these kids or something, you know what I mean? Like a little kind of statement like that can go a long way.
Just to be able to acknowledge that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are mutants, and that's why they have powers, is just, they can't even do that much. They have to come out with another way to explain them. And it's it stinks.
Yeah, just if they can get around that. I mean, I think that would be worth it. Forget trying to get Cyclops or Wolverine to join the Avengers or something. Just get the word.
Funny enough, Hugh Jackman did an interview where he basically he said he would love to join the Avengers, but he says he says it's not realistically going to happen because of the politics involved, but he said if it was up to him, he'd be joining the Avengers.
Yeah, I could see a lot of the people involved in that would be interested in doing one of those team ups, I think Andrew Garfield was really excited about the possibility of doing the Avengers too, but
oh, poor Andrew Garfield. Yeah, but they're recasting him, which is sad. I feel sorry for him because I don't think he did a bad job at all as Peter Parker Spider-Man. But I realize that they want to the new Marvel Universe Spider-Man that they're doing. I realize they want to divorce him completely from the old movies.
Yeah, well, I think they just need the fresh start.
Right.
They can't. If they're gonna develop this as something that ties into the MCU, they don't want little inconsistencies and.
Right, exactly. They don't want to have Andrew Garfield be Spider-Man and then have to explain why did this go on in the last two Spider-Man movies when this was happening in the MCU, or how does
Yeah.
So they want to start fresh. They want to start from a point where they can connect it all to their universe without any problems. Interestingly enough, the spin-off films that Sony had in development are still a go. They're still being planned. They're still doing Sinister Six. They're still doing Venom. They're still going to be doing the female Spider-Man Heroes spin-off that they were talking about.
I thought Venom was at Fox.
Nope. Venom is with Sony because he's part of the Spider-Man universe. So he's...
Oh, no, yeah, that's what I meant. Not at Marvel,
yeah,
but at Sony.
He's at Sony.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the deal is Sony still has control of all the Spider-Man property. That's still... Spider-Man is still with Sony. Sony is just leasing him out to Marvel, so that Marvel can use him. And also they're letting Marvel, Sony is letting Marvel be involved with the next Spider-Man movies, which is the deal. Other than that, the rights remain 100% with Sony, and they can still do whatever they want with Spider-Man. In fact, the contract even says, even though Marvel's going to be involved with the next Spider-Man movie, Sony still has final creative say over that movie and what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Let's just hope it's not another reboot.
It's going to be another reboot, but let's not do the...
Not our origin story?
Yeah, let's not do the origin. We all know it. He gets bit by a spider. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like doing the next Superman movie with him coming back from Krypton. We know it. So what's interesting is, what version of Spider-Man are we going to get with this new one? Are we going to get high school Peter Parker? Or are we going to get, an adult Peter Parker who, they could really go either way with that.
I wonder if they're going to squeeze him in somewhere earlier. Like, I could totally see Marvel adding like a scene, maybe even like a post-credit scene that's like detached with Spider-Man.
The original announcement said that Spider-Man is going to be appearing in a Disney-produced Marvel film first before he gets another film.
Okay.
So he is... Yeah, so they are going to squeeze him in. The rumors I read said they're putting him in Captain America 3.
That's supposed to be because of the Civil War storyline, where he was heavily involved in that in the comic books.
Exactly, yep. People were speculating, so people are speculating that's where they're gonna put him. It's gonna be weird, though. I don't know how that's gonna work, because Spider-Man is gonna be, like, brand new in that universe when that happens, and so... I'm wondering, like, how he ends up, like, if they're going to make him important to that plot, how does he end up being so important?
I think they need to bring in where he's going to be important by proxy from other characters. So the first thing I think they need to address with the whole Civil War thing is that the whole point is that it's about people wearing masks with secret identities and stuff. And that's not really something in the MCU. There isn't, like, any character...
No.
In the MCU with a secret identity.
Everybody knows who Steve Rogers is. Everybody knows Tony Stark is Iron Man.
Tony Stark, yeah.
Everybody knows Bruce Banner is the Hulk.
Everybody knows Thor is Thor.
Yeah, Thor is Thor.
he makes...
Nobody has a secret...
No code name.
Right. Nobody has a secret identity in this universe. Nobody's wearing a... I mean, Iron Man started out... Tony Stark started out as, like, trying to have a secret identity with Iron Man, but
they blew that out before the end of the first movie.
Yeah, they threw it out before the end of the first movie. It just falls apart. That was it for secret identities in the Marvel movie universe. So the conflict can't be about that anymore.
And Black Panther, from what I hear, he's not really a secret identity either. So it can't be that. You know, some people were speculating it might be him because he wears a mask, but he doesn't have a secret identity, really. So
no, he's the king of his own country. He can't have a secret identity. You know.
But so there's got to be maybe somebody else they're introducing that will tie in. Maybe not even necessarily a major movie, like they're going to introduce a character from that, but maybe, you know, maybe there'll be a character in Avengers or in, you know, the next Iron Man or in something else that pops up as a, you know, character with a secret identity, and then that will introduce that concept. And once you introduce that concept, then you can kind of push Spider-Man into it as kind of like the forefront, as like a really important and known entity of a character that has a secret identity.
The only character I think that's coming that has a secret identity is going to be Daredevil.
Yeah.
Which they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and then when obviously Spider-Man's going to have, so it's like, so far it's them two.
Who knows though? I mean, they could start, you know, Daredevil's going to be introduced through, you know, a Netflix series. They introduced the Inhumans through, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now, so they could have some of the Inhumans. They could introduce Spider-Man
through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
They could use that as, like,
that would be kind of cool. That would actually...
That'd be kind of cool. Well, I mean, one cool thing they could do now with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is in the comics, Peter Parker's parents were actually S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And so...
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. That's the main reason why he was raised by his aunt instead of, his own parents, because they were S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and they were off on some secret mission or something. I forgot what the storyline was. But yeah, they can do that on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They could tie that back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Which would be a cool link.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways they can do it. I think it's amazing how well they've been able to fit everything together in that universe. There's been a lot of cases where I didn't think something would fit together right, and it just did.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely excited to see it. If the rumors are true, I'm the most psyched for Captain America 3 now.
Those have been my favorites of all of them anyways, the Captain America movies.
Right.
Which I would have never thought that would have been my favorite, you know, comic book movie series.
Nope. I was never a big Captain America fan. I always thought he was kind of a boring character.
He works for film, though.
Yeah, but he works for the film. Chris Evans does a good job with the character.
Yeah.
As making Captain America not just like some boring white bread Superman guy, but actually like a guy you can relate to and root for. Chris Evans, yeah, he makes that work. And of course, like, I was blown away by Captain America 2 because of what they did with it, with that whole twist with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, and how it turns into like this high octane like spy thriller, like Mission Impossible or something.
Yeah.
And that was easily my favorite Marvel movie of the current bunch.
Yeah, I'd say probably I'd say probably right now the way I'd rank it would be Captain America 2 at the top, then probably Guardians, and then Avengers.
I agree with you. 100%. Yep.
And I, you know, but Avengers 2, man, that trailer is one of the most amazing trailers I think I've ever seen.
Looks like it's going to be better than Avengers 1.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for any like clever use of like, you know, old material. So like when they're using the, you know, oh, I've got strings, you know,
yeah,
Pinocchio song.
Pinocchio song.
Man.
Oh yeah,
so good.
That told.
And when James Spader repeats the lines at the end of the trailer, whoo,
I got
it's like chills down my back. Yeah,
goosebumps. I was like,
James Spader's so awesome.
I was throwing my money at the screen, hoping movie tickets would pop out.
So that comes out on my birthday, I think. So yeah, I'm gonna be having a late night on my birthday. So
nice, happy birthday! Wow, I wish Well, my birthday happens like a month after that movie comes out, so, but yeah, I'm still going to be at the theaters May 1st, or as close to May 1st as I possibly can make it, just to see it. And I saw the first Avengers in the theater, and so I definitely want to be there for this one. I'm probably gonna spend a little extra for 3D, I think.
I think what's strange is that there used to be this kind of perception that if something's shot in 3D, then you want to see it in 3D. But if it's not shot in 3D, if it's a conversion, then you do not want to watch it in 3D. But I think Avengers kind of changed that, because Avengers was not shot in 3D, and I think they did an amazing job on the 3D.
Oh,
in that
yeah.
movie.
Well, I didn't see the Avengers in 3D. I did see Guardians in 3D, and the conversion on that was pretty well done. I mean, that was some good 3D on Guardians.
I think one of the problems with when you actually shoot in 3D is that you get this weird like ghosting effect that just, it's something that comes because you're shooting in 3D, so you have these two overlaying images. Right. So like the perfect example I can think of was it The Amazing Spider-Man? When the trailers started coming out for that, I didn't even watch that, but I watched the trailers, and everything, it looked like a hologram in front of the screen rather than like actually Spider-Man in front of the screen. Because everything was ghosted, you could see kind of like two images on top of each other, because that's what 3D is. But when it's converted, they're only kind of affecting the edges to make it pop out. So anywhere else it's like solid, and it doesn't have that look like it's a hologram in front of something. It has that look like something solid in front of you.
Right, exactly. I don't even know like how many movies these days are filmed in 3D. I don't think there's many anymore. It seems like conversion is the preferred method for most studios now.
If the conversion's good, I think it's probably a superior method.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
But let's return this back to Better Call Charles Xavier. And so we got way off topic here. So let's finish this off with some final comments about Better Call Saul. So are you going to keep watching it, or are you going to try to catch up on Breaking Bad first?
I'm going to try to do both at the same time. See what happens. If Saul starts getting too spoilery, I'm probably going to drop it for a while until I catch up on Breaking Bad, but I think I'm going to watch them concurrently, at least for the time being. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I love the show. I think it's the best new show of the season, bar none.
I'd agree, but of course, it's February.
Yeah, of course, yeah, it's February. But taking everything that came out in the fall and everything that's set to come out now, I definitely think Saul's the best of the bunch.
I agree.
Vince Gilligan has knocked it out of the park. AMC has knocked it out of the park again. Did you see like the ratings Saul got for like its premiere episode? It's insane. 4.4 million. It broke a record.
And Walking Dead broke another one as well, didn't it?
Yeah, and Walking Dead broke another one as well. The show keeps both AMC shows. I mean, it's like they have the Midas touch.
Yeah, it's weird though, because it seems that way, but then they've also had quite a few failures as well.
That's true. Halt and Catch Fire, that was on AMC, right?
That was a good show though. Did you watch that?
I haven't actually. I saw the trailers and I was kind of like, I don't know.
It's actually pretty good. That one I actually do like. But the ones I'm thinking of are like Rubicon. That failed really badly. I know some people really liked that show, but it just did not do well. And then was it that there's a police one they had. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was based on a British series, Low Winter Sun.
Oh, okay.
That was a big flop as well.
Totally forgot about that show. Yeah. So it seems like AMC is a network where when it has a hit, it has a big hit, and when it has a flop, it has a big flop.
Yeah.
It seems to be a network of extremes.
And then they have their reality shows too.
Yeah, their reality shows
those are pretty horrible.
Yeah, those are awful.
I like Comic Book Man, but that's
Comic Book Man is all right. I watched Talking Dead.
Yeah.
Mostly because I like Chris Hardwick, and also because I'm like so geeky about The Walking Dead. I just like watching celebrities talk about it. But
yeah, but they're like, God, they had that one fake reality show. It was horrible. I remember they aired it during, I think, the final season of Breaking Bad. They had it. And they made it like, oh, you want to see, like, when they took their midsummer break, like, you want to see the extended preview of Breaking Bad, you have to watch it during this show. And so I, like, watched that show, and I was like, this is horrible. This is the worst thing I've seen in, like, ages.
What was it?
I can't even remember. I think it was about, like bounty hunters or something, but it was like a reality show, but it was fake.
Oh, dude, yeah.
It was really bad.
Those types of reality shows. Yeah. That's the one thing that bugs me about most reality programming, and why I avoid it is because so much of it is obviously fake.
Yeah.
It's like it's supposed to be giving you insight into like this particular facet of society that you probably wouldn't have thought about, but then they just like they fake it up to like and make it totally ridiculous to the point where it's stupid.
Oh, this was planned fiction from the beginning. It was just trying to look like a reality show, kind of like in the way Spinal Tap was trying to look like a documentary,
right?
You know? So this was like a mock-ality show. if like Spinal Tap is a mockumentary, you know, but it was just a very bad one. It just wasn't good. I'm a little mixed on reality shows. I mean, I'm a huge Survivor fan. I watch that constantly. I really like that. But otherwise, I think I hate almost all of it. And I really hate the stuff like the Jersey Shores and Keeping Up with the Kardashians and all those kind of things. I'm just like,
I'll admit to liking Pawn Stars and Storage Wars.
Is that because you kind of dream that you could open up something and find something valuable in it?
Yeah.
It's that like treasure hunter that every boy has inside them?
Yeah, I think ever since I was like a little kid, I've always had like this collector mentality where I would find something really valuable. And I got like, when I was like 10, I just got like really into the idea of collecting comic books and them one day being worth like hundreds of dollars or something. And of course, I don't think any comic book I bought in 1992 is worth hundreds of dollars today.
Apparently nothing printed in the 90s is worth anything.
Nope. And also it didn't help the fact that I was a 10-year-old with this mentality, and that just happened to be at the same time as the huge speculator boom. So I had like everybody like feeding into this idea for me to, supporting that kind of mentality, because everybody, like, apparently everybody in the world was like also invested in that idea at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that did not help.
I remember I went to a comic book shop that offered money for trade-ins, and they had some other stuff. So I'm like, I'm just not a collector. I'm somebody that always flirted with the idea of it, but it's something I'm not good at preserving things and keeping them well. I'm just not, it's something that's like it's a cool idea for me, but I'm more the person that'll buy everything digital so I have it all on my phone or something, instead of having a bunch of stuff. But, I was trying to get rid of a bunch of my old stuff. So I had, comic books, and most of them are like early 90s stuff, like early 90s X-Men and, stuff like that. And I started grabbing kind of everything else I had extra. So I had some, Magic cards and some other stuff. And I'm like, I'm just going to see what I can sell. The place wouldn't even take any of my comic books. They're just worth nothing, like 90s comics are worth nothing. And they're just not even going to it's not worth buying it for them,
Oh, I know.
And then I ended up selling 2 of my Magic cards, ones I didn't even care about, for like $100.
Oh wow, that's great! I should have bought Magic cards when they came out. I was totally on the wrong track collecting comic books.
And these were cards that I didn't even want. Like, they're not even the ones I play with. They're just like, I kind of just brought in the cards that I wouldn't ever play with again, just in case I wanted to do it. And they said, yeah, we'll give you like 60 for this and 40 for that. I'm like, okay.
Oh, it's awesome. All right. Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember like I used to get Wizard magazine every month. I'd like go check the price guide to see what my comics were worth that month. And like I did this religiously for years. And And every month I was always disappointed because my comics never appreciated in value. The price guide would always they would always stay the same or depreciate. I was like, oh man, I'm buying the wrong books. I could never seem to like get the ones that were hot at the moment, or even like accurately predict what was going to be hot at the moment.
Even if you had one that's like hot, chances are it's because it's in the 90s, they overprinted so much that they're still not worth anything. I mean, I have like Spawn #7, which is, it's not one, but it's a pretty early, print of Spawn, which was a pretty big series at the time. And nothing. They wouldn't even offer me money for it.
Wow.
So
I actually did have Spawn #1. I bought that one when it first came out, and that was like a pretty big deal for a while. And I think that was like the one I was like the most proud of having at the time. But but even that's not worth anything now.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is if they print, so many copies that there's no scarcity, there's no rarity to them.
Right.
Then they're just worthless.
The reason,
it's just paper.
And what I didn't understand at the time was, because I was just a kid, what I didn't understand at the time was that concept. I thought what made comics valuable was like, because it was like the introduction of a super important character, a new hero, maybe like, somebody's first issue. Well,
remember when, like, the Death of Superman comic book, and people were going crazy buying up copies of that.
I ran down
it was going to be worth a huge amount of money, and of course they printed like 50 million copies in the first run, so it's worthless.
I remember when that happened, I ran down to my local comic book store, and I could not get a copy of that comic. It was all sold out by the time I got down there, and I had to settle for like the graphic novel collection of like all the issues leading up to it, plus that issue, which I read. I must have read that like a dozen times because I thought that storyline was so cool. But
did you ever see the YouTube video by the writer of Chronicle? About the Death of Superman?
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty cool.
It's got like Elijah Wood in it. And
yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was like that was a big deal back then. Also I started getting into comics at the exact same time Image Comics was founded, and that was becoming like a big thing. And so a lot of the early comics I bought were like Image comics, like Spawn and Youngblood and all those.
There was another company that started around the same time as Image and just, I think, kind of faded into obscurity. And I think
Valiant.
Was that it?
Yeah.
I had one comic book that I bought just because it was like a total gimmick, and it had like a hole through the comic book, like through the entire thing. It had like a guy that was like shot with a laser or something, and the cover had him like with this hole through him, and so they had a hole through the whole comic.
I remember one of the big things they did back then was like Image Comics and Valiant had like this big crossover of their universes, which they released like 5 comics, which was like this big event crossover. And I totally bought into that. I thought, okay, this is cool. I actually had a copy of Turok Dinosaur Hunter number 1, which started out as worthless and continued to be worthless. But not even like the N64 game, which made Turok more popular, did anything to help the value of that comic book.
Man.
But I remember, I mean, I did a lot of speculating back then. It was awful. Of course, I also bought comic books for sheer enjoyment, too. I remember, like, that's when I got into Spider-Man, when I learned about Spider-Man, and I actually put in a subscription at the local comic book store so I could get all the Spider-Man comics so I could read them every month. It's because he was my favorite superhero for a long time.
Yeah. I was reading mostly, I think, like X-Men and the other kind of mutant comics at the time, so...
X-Men, too, I was, like, really big into, mostly because of the cartoon that they had.
Oh, yeah, that was what got me really into it.
Yep. That cartoon, they had the Spider-Man cartoon and the X-Men cartoon, and I watched both of them religiously.
Yeah.
And so they kind of became my favorite superheroes, and by proxy, that meant Marvel became my favorite comic book company. So I was always a Marvel kid. I wasn't really a DC kid. I didn't read too many DC comics.
Same here. You know, DC had Batman. That was like the one, you know, really good one. But, so I'd every so often I'd get like a Batman comic if it was like a big deal or something.
Me too. Yeah, me too. But if I bought DC comics.
Yeah, I got like the graphic novel for like Death in the Family, you know, or I got some of the issues that followed that and stuff like that.
If I bought DC comic book, it was either because it was like some huge event was happening or because it was Batman.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, I really enjoyed the Marvel versus DC stuff. The amalgam was like amazing when that happened.
Yeah. We really can't get off topic. I'll have to mark this down for any comic book fans that want to listen to our podcast.
Definitely. Maybe just like section this off and like make it its own comic book podcast for when we do Comic Book Enthusiasts.
I'll just put it on the I'll put it on the SoundCloud, but I won't put it on the site or something.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we
and I'll crop out the Better Call Saul stuff.
Right. Yeah, the Better Call Saul impressions. I mean, I don't know. I think now we've said everything we could say about that.
Yeah, it's good. I'm looking forward to more of it.
Definitely.
I think the first season's like 8 episodes or something. It's a short season.
Oh, really? Okay, so it's not going to be like too much. I actually think that's better. I really like this trend of truncated, short seasons because I think it's less of a time investment as far as viewing goes because there's like so much to watch and do out there. And B, I think it forces the writers to tell a more tightly wound story, so where they don't have room to go off on these tangents or do these B stories, which may be, totally stupid, and take away from the main action of what's happening. Like, because I noticed like in a lot of shows where we got like 24 episodes for a season, the writers may have like an idea of what they're doing, but then there's like so much that there's so much time that they have to fill that they start coming up with filler, just to reach those 24 episodes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm glad to see that the cable trend is starting to spread more to TV now, and that even the cable trend was always like 13 episodes, and now we're getting even shorter seasons than that. And that's kind of more like a trend from Europe, because in Europe, most seasons are like 6 episodes.
Right.
Some shows have like 3 episode seasons, and it allows them to be really tight and concise, and they keep the writing staff very small, which is good because it means that everybody has a very strong grip. There's no inconsistency in, where characters are going. There's never like these moments where you're like, oh, that's very out of character for that person, because there's only like 1 or 2 people writing the whole show.
Right.
Whereas over here we have these 24 episode, seasons, and they have a writer's room of like 20,
Right. And then, yeah, so you could get inconsistencies with the character. You could have a character acting one way in one episode, and then they might do something out of character in another episode, and that's simply because they got like
too many cooks.
Yeah, they got too many cooks. They got like 20 people writing this character.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own ideas everybody brings their own ideas to the table of who this character is and how they should behave, what they're supposed to be doing. And so I think, that's a problem. That becomes a problem.
I think it's good. I think shorter seasons are good. I think sometimes it's kind of maddening just because there's such a long time between them. Like, every time Game of Thrones starts up, it's like 10 weeks and then it's gone. It's very hard.
That's the worst part, yeah. Or try being a Sherlock fan.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Sherlock, sometimes it doesn't even come back for a year.
Nope. Let's see. The new season episodes aired January of 2013, and I don't think it's scheduled to come back again until 2016 now, they said. They're doing a Christmas episode.
Okay.
But they're going to do a Christmas special, but that's it until 2016.
That's another thing that we're starting to see some shows start to experiment with in the United States now, too, are Christmas specials and stuff, where normally we would just have a Christmas episode because, the
It's
show was on during that
Christmas.
time and it was Christmas,
Yeah.
But now we're starting to get stuff like, I think it started with like Sci-Fi. The Sci-Fi Channel had shows like Eureka and stuff that were off the air, but that they'd have a Christmas special.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think Psych did one, and some other shows did it, and we haven't seen a lot of movement there yet, but now we're starting to get all the British Christmas specials over here.
That's a staple of British television. They will always have a Christmas special for like every show they do, whether or not that show was on the air at the time.
Yep.
It's like, again, Sherlock is off the air for a time being, but they're doing the Christmas special. Because almost like it's they do it, it's almost like it's an obligation with them. It's like somebody comes in and says, we have to do the Christmas special, guys, come on.
Yeah.
But, I don't know I've saw pictures of it, and it's interesting, because apparently they're in Victorian times now. Yeah.
That's strange.
The set pictures they got, everybody's dressed up in Victorian garb, and there's like a big green screen behind everybody, and Benedict Cumberbatch is dressed up as the classic Sherlock Holmes from the old movies and the novels.
With like the tweed coat and hat.
With the tweed coat and hat, yeah. and Watson has the mustache and the boiler cap. and so people are wondering what the heck's going on. Because nobody's gonna suggest they suddenly time traveled. So that's got a lot of people confused and interested in what's happening with this Christmas special. It might be just like some cute one-off thing they're doing.
Yeah, or it could be like, something like they're talking about an alternate situation. There could be somebody telling a story,
It could be,
and
yeah.
it's just kind of reimagined that way or something. There's lots of ways they could do that.
Right.
Or it could just be a completely separate one-off thing that's completely unconnected.
Yeah, it could be like, somebody's telling a story about a case that happened in Victorian times that just happens to involve similar characters to Sherlock and Watson. They did the same thing in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where they did an episode where they were in revolutionary times, and they and it was explained because they were telling a story about their ancestors. But yeah, there's lots of ways they could do that.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see. So that's going to be for this coming up Christmas then.
Yep.
That'll be cool. So yeah, so I imagine they're going to launch the next season in January in 2016 then? So they'll just start on the Christmas and then go through?
I think so. I think that's what they're doing.
Because I know some shows have done that before where they've timed to go after a Christmas special.
I know people wanted it to be back this year. I think the reason it's been delayed till 2016 is because of Benedict Cumberbatch being signed on to do Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got that commitment, and so that I think that's delaying the production of Sherlock.
He and Martin Freeman have been doing a lot of stuff, so...
Oh, yeah, definitely. Ever since Sherlock started airing, they both blown up and became, like, big stars now.
Yeah, I think Cumberbatch has had, 4 movies this year.
Yeah.
And, Martin Freeman, of course, was in The Hobbit. So was Cumberbatch, but he was just doing voice roles. A lot of roles for both of them. And then, of course, Martin Freeman was in Fargo as well this year.
Yeah. Which, Fargo, that was another show I really enjoyed. I thought
it's going to be cool with the next season because it's not going to be, a direct follow-up. It's going to take place, before.
Yeah, it's gonna be a prequel to this season.
Yeah, it's gonna be the main character, her father. It's gonna be like him when he was younger.
Yeah, it's gonna be about a case that he mentioned on Fargo in this season, and it's gonna
about the only other time that he really felt like something was dangerous or something.
Yeah, the only other time he felt something was dangerous. He just mentions this, and now it's cool that they're gonna go into it. They're gonna explore that, which is not something I thought they'd do. I mean, I thought the next season was going to be completely unrelated to anything in that season, in the way most anthology shows tend to be.
Yeah.
Like True Detective, the new season of that isn't going to have any relation that I know of to the first season.
No, it's at least as far as we know now, it's completely separate. But it's I'm kind of skeptical about that one. I really like True Detective, so I should just kind of have faith that it's going to be okay, but every time I hear something, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, first of all, the director did, like, all the episodes of the first season. He's not going to be involved with this new one.
It's Fast and the Furious directors doing like half of them,
Yeah, Fast and Furious, and they're going to have another director. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, that means that it's not, the direction isn't going to be as consistent throughout as in the first season. I'm wondering how that's going to have an effect.
Yeah. That's kind of a big concern for me as well.
Yep.
Also, just kind of the change in setting and kind of some of the character descriptions that have been put out. It kind of seems like that, you know, like when a new superhero movie used to come out and it would be like, oh, you know, this is the second superhero movie, so instead of one villain, there's two villains. But then there's like 6 other characters, and, you know, it's just to get just overcrowded.
Yeah.
That's how I'm kind of feeling about like all the casting stuff for True Detective, because they're like, oh, and this character plays a big role, and this character plays a big role, and it's like there were like 2 big characters in the first one,
yeah,
you know? And now there's like 7.
Yeah, now there's 7 in here. I mean, a big part of what made the first season so good was the fact that it was just those 2 characters, and their interactions, how they played off of each other, was like a very big part of what made that work. And so now you got like 7, you know, how many people playing off of each other now? I don't know.
There's at least 4 like really big prominent roles, and then there's more after that as well.
Right.
Because it's what, Vince Vaughn,
Colin Farrell, yep.
Taylor
Kitsch is in the, I don't know how I feel about this cast.
Who's the woman they cast? I'm trying to remember. Is it Evan Rachel Wood, or was that...
Isn't it Rachel
Westworld?
McAdams? I thought they actually cast her.
It's Rachel McAdams,
okay.
That's it, yeah. Evan Rachel Wood is in Westworld.
Which, that has the potential to be interesting.
The cast on that is insane.
Yeah, definitely.
But with a large cast for that, it makes more sense to me than a large cast on True Detective, because conceptually it seems more like a...
ensemble.
Yeah.
Yeah, True Detective doesn't strike me as an ensemble piece, especially because it didn't start as one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, who knows? I mean, we'll have to see when it comes out, you know, how it comes together.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly rooting for it. I want it to be as good or even better than the first season.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch it and be let down.
I think I'm in a good position, though, because, you know, like, I loved Better Call Saul, but there's still part of me that was let down just because I let myself get too hyped up for it. So
right.
I'm kind of happy to go into True Detective with kind of doubts, because that'll mean that I'm more likely to be surprised happily.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely going to watch it. It's not like I'm going to go like, I don't know if I'll invest time. No, I'm going to watch it.
I'm going to watch it. I don't blame you for being overly hyped for Better Call Saul. I think Breaking Bad set like a very high bar for television as a whole.
Yeah.
And, you know, that kind of thing, that's hard to repeat, you know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I still really liked it. I still thought it was really good, and I'm still looking forward to it more, and there are things, they're like, I don't know what you'd call them, like, I guess, Vince Gilliganisms
yeah.
to the series that are like,
classic,
you know, they're very distinct. Like, yeah, exactly.
Just the way shots are framed.
Yeah.
And that is very distinct. Like, they'll focus on things. Like I think in the first episode of Better Call Saul, you know, there's like a scene where, you know, the main focus of the scene for like a solid like minute is like an iguana. And then it focuses in on like what's going on, and that's a very Vince Gilligan type thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Where he does that. Like I seen on Breaking Bad and stuff where they'll have like scenes start out where you're following an insect or something, and before it gets to like the real focus or meat of the scene. And I think he does that a lot. And
it's oftentimes done to, like, great effect. Like, where you just think, like, oh, it's just kind of style or something, but it's usually not. There's usually a lot more to it. A perfect example of that would be, there's an episode of Breaking Bad, the one where Jesse was dealing with meth heads that stole the money. That was in the second season. And the whole episode started off with this spider kind of crawling by.
Yeah.
And Jesse kind of puts his hand out and it's crawling on his hand. He's just kind of like watching it and, and then he kind of like puts it back on the ground and lets it kind of walk away and his friend walks up and stomps on it.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's such a meaningful moment because it's really what it is it's telling you about Jesse's character.
Right.
And like who Jesse is. And then it's telling you, but this is who Jesse's around.
Right.
Like these are the people that are surrounding Jesse and this is Jesse,
It basically tells you that Jesse is a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that he's involved in dealing meth and he's involved with all these drug addicts. These people, he's not like them.
But he tries to be. He wants to be like them, but he's not.
Yeah. Because he's genuinely a good person at his core. And so he can't be like these other people because he doesn't lack the conscience that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a good example.
So it's that kind of stuff that I really miss and have Breaking Bad having been off the air for, year and a half, 2 years now, you forget how much you miss certain things like that. And then you see it again and you're like, oh yeah, it's in Better Call Saul. Perfect examples would be, like the restaurant scene where, that we had mentioned before, or
Yep.
in the first episode, there was there's a lot to the first episode. I thought the black and white was really interesting. I wrote in the impressions that it's as if all the color had been drained out of his life.
Right.
And then that's why it's black and white. And it's almost as like this literal meaning to that. And I really like that, it's stuff like that. And these really kind of slow, kind of meandering, methodical kind of moments that to some people might actually be kind of boring or something, but there's so much to read into and to contemplate during those scenes.
I think at first blush it is boring because normally with like television you're used to
instant gratification.
Yeah, everything being so high intensity from the get-go, and because most producers want to please the audience as soon and as much as possible. In Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul now, they take their time.
Mm-hmm.
They take their time to get to where they're going because they know that the payoff is going to be so much worth it when they do get there that they can take their time focusing on these details.
I mentioned in the impressions also Chekhov's gun. Have you heard about that before?
Yeah, if you see something, it's going to be used later.
Yeah, and Breaking Bad is like one of the go-to examples people use when they try to explain Chekhov's gun, because it's one of the best uses of that literary tool. And that, there's tons of moments where you'll just kind of see something and then it starts to kind of play more into it. I guess a good example of that would be like the eyeball and the teddy bear.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of too.
Mm-hmm.
The eyeball and teddy bear. I think the first time you see it, it's this bizarre scene, it's floating in a swimming pool,
mm-hmm.
And you're kind of wondering, what's the deal there, but you don't get an explanation. They don't go further into it. It's just something that's there for now.
Yeah.
But then later on, it comes up again, and you finally get the explanation for where that came from, what the deal with that was.
And then in the third season, you get you're already past this point where the cousins pick it up off the floor.
Yep.
They leave it on the bed after they leave, and that's like Walter's only sign that somebody could have been in his house or something,
Right. They pick it up off the floor because Walter earlier was cleaning his pool.
Mm-hmm.
He had taken the money that he had and he threw it into his swimming pool, and he was actually had second thoughts, and he was actually trying to recover as much of that money as he could, and that's when he found the eye. And then so later when they find it on the floor, you see Walter had taken that into his house.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's little details like that, that is really cool.
it's a foreshadowing tool, and it's great. So when I watch Better Call Saul, of course I'm coloring everything through the lens of trying to figure out that, you know, where the Chekhov's gun is coming in, you know? So there'll be like little shots where like you'll see the main character, but he's out of focus, and he'll be focused on like, you know, a phone in the foreground. So it's like, okay, how's that going to come into play? And the thing about the way Breaking Bad did it is sometimes that would be something that would happen in that episode. Sometimes it would be something that would happen like way later.
Right.
There'd be like, it would re-reference something like that, like way down the line.
They could put something like, say the next episode comes out, they could put something insignificant there, and you probably won't even hear or see it again until season 3.
But they'll frame it in such a way that you remember it. That you'll be like, that was weird. Why'd they focus on this doorknob for so long or something? And then later on there'll be something and you'll go like, oh, once that happens, it'll all kind of click in your head.
Right. Exactly. And that's crazy. And that's cool too, because it shows that they have some forethought into where they're going. You know, it's proof that they're not just making everything up on the spot or as they go along. I mean, they could be. I mean, they could go back, but but the way it plays out and fits so perfectly, you know, you gotta say to yourself, yeah, that was planned.
Well, I know that Vince Gilligan has said that he will intentionally write himself into corners.
Oh, okay.
Because he says that's when you get the really kind of inventive ideas. Is because he writes himself into a corner, but then instead of going like, oh, well, let's just pretend that didn't happen or something, he writes himself into a corner and then forces himself to write himself out of the corner.
Right, a plausible way out of the corner. I noticed that a lot in different shows and media where writers will write themselves into a corner and then kind of like sidestep it or like cheat their way out of it, and it'll come off as like really forced or fake. Like, you'll get a scene where, like, the main character's facing certain death, and then, like, the hand of God will come out of nowhere and save them, and it's like...
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, Deus Ex Machina, which, you know, comes off as, like, really fake, and it's just because the writer didn't know what to do. So that's really cool, you know, that he sits there and he forces himself to come up with a plausible explanation for how to get out of that corner, rather than just cheat around it. Yeah,
it's one of the things I like about the show. Whenever I try to explain Breaking Bad to somebody, there's like certain words that kind of always pop up, you know, and just in the vocabulary of that show. And it's, I always say consequences is one of the big ones. I say change, and those are like the two major ones. Everything has a consequence. Even if you think it's long past and they've gotten past it, it'll come back 2 seasons down the line. Something will happen and you'll be like, oh shit, I completely forgot about that. You know, it's like everything comes back to, if something can bite you in the ass, it will. It's like Murphy's Law in action, you know, on the show.
Like the 2 hitmen in like season 3. It turns out those were Tuco's cousins.
Yep.
And they were mostly seeking revenge for Tuco's death, you know, and that's why they're there hunting Walt.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's again, consequences.
Yep. Everything, you know, and Better Call Saul's done that already, which is exciting.
Yeah, Better Call Saul decided to run some stupid con, and already consequences.
Yep.
Now he's involved with Tuco's guys, and he can't get out of it.
And it shapes the characters. These consequences then go on to change the characters. So,
right.
In the case of Saul, in some ways, his initial encounter had a very positive effect on him, because he walked away surviving, realizing that he is a good lawyer, that he does have this ability to talk himself out of a bad situation. And you saw him kind of like getting to this point where he was doing a lot of work and he was getting it done.
It's kind of funny because, like, yeah, you just said, like, Vince Gilligan writes himself into corners. And here we saw Saul literally forced into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to talk himself out of it in the way that, like, a writer would have to write himself out of a corner. Saul had to find a way to talk himself out of this corner he was stuck in, and he managed to do it miraculously.
Yeah, it proved to himself that he can be a good lawyer, which allowed him to become a good lawyer, you know? It's that whole idea of, like, if you know you are, then you can.
Right.
If you see yourself do something,
Right.
then you're like, I guess I can do that. And then it takes away that feeling of hopelessness or of, it subsides and you can do it, so you do
The
it.
insecurity.
I've experienced that. Things like playing guitar, there have been like a trick that I just could not learn. I just could not figure it out. And then one time I happened to get it like okay. And then it started to kind of click in my head like, oh, I can do this. And that allowed me to stop overthinking it and just do it.
You see that, too, with, because at the very beginning of the series, they're waiting for Saul to come out and, actually defend his clients. And he's in the bathroom, nervously practicing what he's going to say. And then when he's with Tuco, he doesn't have the luxury of practicing what he's going to say. He has to think on the spot and come up with it, and he manages to do it. And so, and then you see that nervousness fade away.
Speaking of that first trial.
Oh, yeah.
The lawyer walks up, doesn't say a word, pops in a videotape, hits play, doesn't say a word. Wow.
Yeah, I never thought, the show was gonna open on,
a necrophilia joke?
Necrophilia. Yeah, yeah. So it's like, that was really funny. Saul comes in there, he makes this great speech, oh, they were just dumb kids, they made a mistake. And you don't know what that is, when Saul's speaking, but then when they put on the video, you're like, okay, that's what he was up against.
And it just keeps getting worse, It starts bad and it keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it just keeps getting worse. And he's lost the case. The other guy didn't even have to say a word.
Yeah. And that was just great for the comedy of just him. The lawyer just walks up, doesn't say anything, pops on the tape, doesn't say anything. Just the way that was all just set up just maximizes the comedic effect of the moment. So I guess that pretty much wraps us up on that. So, it sounds like we're excited about Better Call Saul. This isn't the weekly set. This will just be a kind of an impressions cast or something. I'll come up with some kind of a name and some art for it later. And it'll be available on our SoundCloud account as well as on our site. And we're still going to do another podcast on Thursday night, in our regular format. So that's pretty much it.
Cool. Any idea what we're doing for Thursday's podcast? Do you have a theme?
I don't really have a set topic, but I thought, we could just kind of do a general what we're watching, kind of go over some of the news that's gone on. If I come up with a theme, then I'll add that in, but right now I don't really have a set theme. But yeah, we'll kind of do a what we're watching. We didn't do one last week because, I guess we did because we talked about the Amazon pilots that we watched, but we didn't talk about any of our regular shows that we watched, so
right.
We got about 2 weeks worth of material to work through on that, so.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, cool. Looking forward to it.
All right, so that's us signing off there. Thank you for listening to the Television Enthusiast podcast.
Thank you. Have a good night.
This special Better Call Saul podcast is a product of TV Enthusiast, part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Emails can be sent to theweeklyset@tventhusiast.com. Of course, our web address is tventhusiast.com. .com. 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 .com.